Hi, I'm Melina. And when I was 11, my sister drove me to a group home, told me to wait by the curb, and never came back. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone, like trash taken out and forgotten. Now, over 20 years later, she reappears. Not to apologize, not to reconnect, but to drop off her baby and vanish again, just like she did with me. She tells people I wanted the baby, that I offered, that I begged, but I never agreed to be anybody's replacement. So why does everyone treat me like I've always been part of this plan? And when I tried to say no, she filed paperwork that made me legally responsible. Then she called CPS on me. What kind of sister rewrites your life and makes you the villain in her story? And what happens when you stop being quiet and start showing the receipts? The voicemail came on a Tuesday. I was folding laundry in the living room, reruns of some crime show humming in the background, when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number. I almost didn't check it, but something about that area code, it hadn't shown up in years, nudged at the edge of memory like a splinter I'd long since covered up. I pressed play. And there it was, that voice. "Hey, little sis, been a minute, huh? I could use a favor." Just like that, as if we had spoken last week, as if she hadn't vanished for over a decade without a word. My fingers froze on a half-folded towel. My heart didn't race. It paused, like it couldn't believe my ears either. She sounded light, playful, almost, like she was calling to chat about the weather or to borrow a dress, not like someone who once left her sister at a group home's front door with a bag of clothes and no goodbye. I didn't respond, not immediately. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the dark TV screen. At 31 years old, single, no kids, Fresno resident with a full-time job at a dental office and a part-time gig walking dogs on weekends. A quiet, structured life. A life I built brick by brick after the first one collapsed before I hit puberty. And now here she was, Isolda, my sister, my ghost, calling like nothing had ever happened. Later that evening, I played the voicemail for Ariadne. She raised an eyebrow and sipped her chamomile tea like she was waiting for the punchline. "After 20 years, and she still calls you little sis, like you owe her something?" "She's asking for a favor," I said, the words brittle in my throat. "Said she's overwhelmed." "Do favors usually start with people who once dumped you like garbage?" she asked, not unkindly. "What does she want?" "To help with her baby. Just for the weekend," she said. There was a long pause. Ariadne's silence said everything her words didn't. We'd been roommates for 4 years, friends for 5. She knew the file drawer of my life labeled Isolda was locked for a reason. But the truth is, I listened to that message more than once, not because I needed clarification, but because I didn't trust my own reaction. Something about it had pierced deeper than it should have. Maybe because a part of me, some stupid, rusted part, still wanted to be seen, still wanted to matter to the person who once decided I didn't. I told myself it was just curiosity. A brief peek through a window I swore shut. But when the rideshare pulled up in front of my apartment on Friday evening, car seat already buckled in back, I climbed in. Just like that. Maybe I needed to see her. Maybe I needed to prove I'd outgrown the hurt. The driver didn't say much, just confirmed the address and turned up the radio. The sun was just starting to dip behind the trees as we pulled into a quiet cul-de-sac. The house was small, blue-gray with white trim. The porch light flickered like someone hadn't gotten around to fixing it. No one came out to greet me. I rang the bell, waited, rang again, still nothing. Then I heard it, a soft, high-pitched wail from inside. I stepped in. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house smelled faintly of formula and something metallic. The living room was scattered with baby toys, an empty bottle on the couch, a pair of small shoes by the door. I followed the sound to the nursery. There, in a white crib, was a baby, red-faced, eyes shut tight, fists balled in distress. His onesie read, "Mommy's Little Hero." No note on him, just a diaper bag and a bottle already made. I rushed to scoop him up, the years of babysitting instincts kicking in despite the tremble in my hands. He was lighter than I expected. Warm, alive in a way that rattled me. After calming him down, I went back to the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. The note. Stuck to the fridge with a novelty magnet shaped like a taco, it read, "Back by Monday, you got this." My eyes drifted to the guest room. My bag was already there, unzipped. My toiletries lined up on the bathroom counter. I pulled out my phone and called her. Straight to voicemail, again and again. Nothing. That's when I understood, really understood. This wasn't a favor, this wasn't a visit, this wasn't help, it was a handoff. The second night was worse. The first, I could still tell myself she'd be back by morning. Maybe she got stuck in traffic, maybe there was a misunderstanding, or she was afraid to see me face to face. But by the next day, when noon bled into dusk and the baby had cried himself into a nap on my chest, I knew Isolde hadn't stepped out for air. She had disappeared. There was no suitcase by the door, no texts, no callbacks, just the note on the fridge, curling slightly at the corners like it had been there a while. "Back soon. You'll be fine. There's formula in the cabinet. Not thank you, not please, just assumptions, just instructions written like I was already part of the plan." Ezra, her son, I assumed, was about 8 months old, with a loud cry and eyes that didn't blink when he stared. He didn't recognize me, of course. Why would he? But he also didn't seem surprised that I was here. That unsettled me more than his cries. I walked through the house once Ezra had settled into another nap. The place was too tidy, too staged, as if someone had arranged it for a visit, not to live. Bottles lined up perfectly. A fresh stack of diapers. A white noise machine in his room playing a looping Forest Rain soundtrack. When I passed by the hallway mirror, I caught my reflection and nearly startled. My face looked older than I remembered, tight around the eyes, mouth pulled flat. I looked like someone standing in a house that didn't belong to her. I opened her pantry, found canned soups lined alphabetically. Isolde never used to cook, never cared about labels, expiration dates. But this? This house? It wasn't messy like her, it was curated. And then I made the mistake of checking her social media. Her page was public, just as theatrical as ever. Isolde clinking champagne glasses on a boat, hair swept by wind, lips pouted. The caption read, "Freedom looks good on me." Tagged location, San Diego. The timestamp, posted 2 hours after I arrived at her house. The man in the photo next to her looked twice her age, in a linen shirt and sunglasses that probably cost more than my rent. She was smiling like the world had finally spun the right way for her. Freedom. That word didn't sit right. I shut the screen off and leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded, trying to make sense of the timeline. If she left the house when the rideshare came for me, she must have planned this exact handoff down to the minute. It wasn't a moment of panic, it was precision. "She didn't trust me with her heart when we were kids," I muttered aloud, my voice echoing off the tile. "But she trusts me with her child?" No, she didn't trust me. She used me. There was a difference. I paced. I thought about calling that man from the picture. But I didn't know his name, didn't even know Ezra's last name, the baby's last name. That's how much information I had in this arrangement. None. Later that evening, I started noticing details I had missed before. Ezra's blanket had his initials monogrammed, EJK. That was Isolde's last name. No sign of the father's name anywhere. There was a photo frame in the nursery. I picked it up, already sensing something off. It was a photo of Ezra, just a few months younger. And beside him, smiling softly, was me. Except, I never took that photo. I had never held this child before yesterday. It was me, sure. My hair, my face, slightly younger, but I had no memory of it. The lighting, the background, all looked manufactured, like someone had pasted me into the scene. The blanket in the photo? Same as the one he was sleeping with now. She'd been planning this longer than I realized. I put the frame down slowly, my fingers curled around the edge of the crib. She's rewriting the past, I whispered, the room heavy with silence. She's staging a memory that never existed. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the hallway, every sigh from Ezra's crib put me on edge. I dreamed of that group home bench again, of the cracked concrete beneath my feet, of Isolde's car driving away without headlights on. In the dream, I was holding a baby instead of a duffel bag. In the morning, a knock at the door startled me. Ezra was chewing on a teething ring, sitting in his high chair as I walked over. The delivery guy stood with a medium-sized box tucked under one arm, clipboard in the other. Package for Mommy Melina? I blinked. What? He tilted the label toward me like that would explain it. Sure enough, in neat black font, to Mommy Melina. My chest tightened. I signed the form and closed the door slowly, every inch of air around me thick with something I didn't yet know how to name. What the hell is happening? On the third day, I stopped waiting for her to come back. I'd gone from counting diapers to counting hours. The weight of her absence wasn't surprising anymore. It was just dense, like a fog you don't bother clearing because it's settled into the walls. Ezra had started recognizing me, not in a sweet, sentimental way, just in the way babies adapt quickly to whoever holds the bottle. He stopped crying as much, smiled when I walked into the room, like he'd decided I was permanent enough to trust. The realization unsettled me more than the screaming ever had. After putting him down for a nap, I wandered deeper into the hallway closet, trying to find spare wipes. What I found instead was a translucent plastic bin labeled Memories. It sat behind a stack of unused gift bags and baby shower tissue paper. I almost left it there, but I didn't. Inside were layers, soft blankets that smelled faintly of lavender detergent, a pair of tiny socks still pinned together with a safety pin, and a manila envelope filled with photographs. One of them slipped out as I lifted the flap. Isolde stood in the center of the frame, holding Ezra in one arm, a soft smile on her lips. Her eyes locked on the camera like she was rehearsing for a magazine cover. In the background, slightly blurred, was me, leaning over a stroller, laughing. I sat down on the floor. I didn't remember that photo, not just the moment, but any version of it. The background was our mother's old garden. That house was torn down years ago, which meant this was fabricated, spliced, manipulated. She had stitched me into something that never happened. I rifled through the rest. More photos of Ezra with different backdrops, different outfits. Two of them had me in the corner, always out of focus, always with a smile that felt alien. My face, my clothes, but I wasn't there. She's been curating a version of me I never agreed to play. I tucked the envelope back and stood, heart in my throat. My stomach had that floating, falling feeling, like when someone calls your name and you know you're about to be blamed for something you didn't do. On a dusty shelf above the bin, there was a tattered paperback. Inside, tucked between pages, was a birthday card. To Melina, 15. We'll celebrate properly next year. Promise. Love, Isolde. It was signed in purple pen. I could almost hear her voice. My throat tightened. I remembered that birthday, alone in our shared foster home, eating the stale cupcake one of the aides gave me, waiting the whole day, dressed up for nothing, no call, no visit. Taped to the back of the card was a Polaroid. Isolde on a beach with her friends, drink in hand, dated the same weekend. I sat on the floor again, knees to my chest. Everything around me felt too still, like the house itself had stopped breathing. In the utility drawer near the kitchen, I found it by accident while searching for a screwdriver, half of my old journal. The rest had been torn out. The cover bent, a few pages scribbled through, like someone tried to erase the entries but didn't care enough to finish the job. What she threw away wasn't just paper, it was the version of me that waited for her. The girl who still believed in birthday cards and promises scribbled in purple ink. I called Ariadne. She answered on the third ring. "Hey, everything okay?" "No," I said quietly. "But also, yes, because now I know." A pause. "She didn't just abandon me," I continued. "She saved pieces of me like keepsakes, and now she's using them to build a story that isn't real." Another pause. "When people can't clean up their past," Ariadne said softly, "they try to repurpose it. But just remember, Melina, memories are not consent." It echoed in my head long after the call ended. That night, after Ezra had gone to sleep, I unzipped the diaper bag by the entryway looking for wipes. I found a small scrapbook tucked between an extra change of clothes and a sealed envelope labeled medical. The scrapbook's cover was soft pink with glittery letters. Mommy Me, Melina Baby, Ezra's first year. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Page after page, scenes I had never lived unfolded in glossy, photoshopped smiles. Me in a rocking chair. Me bottle feeding him. Me at a birthday party with a paper crown. All doctored. All lies. My face was everywhere, but none of those moments were mine. I slammed the book shut, breath catching in my throat. The air around me felt suddenly too small to breathe. She's been rewriting my life and printing it. It started with a text from my aunt, one of the older ones, the kind who still uses too many ellipses and signs every message, "Love, Aunt Deb." She asked if I'd be bringing the baby to dinner that evening. Not, "Are you coming?" Not, "Will you be joining us?" Just, "Don't forget Ezra's binky. He gets fussy without it." I stared at the screen, rereading it 3 times. No invitation, no clarification, just assumption. I wasn't even surprised anymore. I showed Ariadne, who sat across the kitchen island with her tablet and a raised eyebrow. "She really just skipped the whole invite part, huh?" she muttered. "She thinks I'm already part of the script," I said. Ariadne tapped the table. "Maybe it's time to flip the page on her." "Should I go?" "Sometimes facing the lie is the only way to kill it." I didn't respond, but we both knew I would. That evening, I dressed simple. Nothing too flashy, but nothing apologetic either. A navy blouse, dark jeans, and flat shoes I could stand in for hours. I packed Ezra's diaper bag, though I hated myself a little for how automatic it had become. The dinner was held at one of my aunt's suburban homes in a cul-de-sac that hadn't changed since the 90s. 24 cars lined the curb. The scent of pot roast drifted down the walkway before I even rang the doorbell. Inside, it was like walking into a scrapbook I never belonged in. "Oh, there she is," someone said. "Melina, sweetie. You look so well, and look at that baby, just like his mama." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Oh, hush," Aunt Lisa said, waving me toward the living room. "You don't have to hide it anymore. We all knew something happened back then. But look at you now, glowing." I glanced around. Heads nodded, smiles stretched in that way people smile when they think they're being gracious about your past. "You're doing great now," another chimed in. "I'm glad you didn't give him up." I didn't speak. My voice had climbed into my throat and decided not to come down. I looked at Ezra, drooling contentedly in my arms, and then at the room of relatives who'd rewritten my life in my absence. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a well-orchestrated rewrite. I excused myself quickly, claiming a diaper change. In the hallway, I stood in front of a mirror and didn't recognize the reflection. Not because my appearance had changed, but because the identity they were building around me wasn't mine. I wasn't the brave young mother reclaiming her place. I was the unwilling actor in a role I never auditioned for. On the way home, I stopped by a small reunion gathering at a cafe downtown. Some high school classmates, mostly people I hadn't seen in years. I told myself it would clear my head. It didn't. The moment I stepped in, Ezra started crying. Loud, persistent. I bounced him gently, murmuring nonsense, and he clung to me harder. Then it happened, clear as a bell. "Mama!" The room paused, the kind of pause that makes your skin buzz. Someone from the corner whispered, "So it was true." No one asked me. No one questioned the context. They just nodded like puzzle pieces had clicked into place. When a lie is told gently enough, people choose to believe it over your truth. I drove home in silence, Ezra snoring softly in the back seat. The streetlights blurred past like streaks of memory I no longer owned. At home, after putting him to bed, I sat at the edge of the couch and opened my phone. My hands shook slightly as I typed. "You crafted a story. I'm not your plot twist. Call me now." I didn't expect a reply, but she answered within minutes. "Relax, it's just temporary. People like stories with clean endings. This is cleaner than 'my sister dumped me.'" I stared at those words like they were fire. She thought this was neat, tidy, better PR. She wasn't just lying, she was laundering history. Later that night, I stood in the bathroom with the light off, holding Ezra in one arm. His tiny fingers curled around my shirt as he slept. I looked in the mirror and whispered, "They don't see you as mine. They see me as yours." And I never agreed to be anyone's mother. On the 6th morning, I found the envelope wedged between a flyer for pest control and a discount coupon for diapers. It was thick, government-issued, with my full name printed cleanly across the front. No typos, no question marks. That in itself was strange. I hadn't used my legal name for anything official in years, let alone given it to any agency since I left the system. I opened it at the kitchen counter with one hand, while Ezra gnawed on a rubber giraffe in the high chair. The contents spilled out, a formal acknowledgement of a child care tax credit filed under my Social Security number. According to the letter, I was listed as the primary guardian of a minor dependent. The government was thanking me for my continued commitment to family stability. I stood there, rereading the form. I didn't apply for help. I didn't even ask for this kid. So why is the government thanking me for my sacrifice? My pulse was high in my throat. I pushed the chair back and walked straight to Isolde's desk in the hallway. What used to be a junk table now converted into a tidy little station for household management. That's what she'd probably call it. I called it the stage. There was a manila folder marked Invoices, Storage, and beneath it a stack of envelopes she hadn't forwarded to her new address, wherever the hell that was. I flipped through and found the key, her login info to a shared benefits portal. The password was the same as it had always been, her birthday and the word Phoenix. She always loved metaphors she didn't have to live through. I logged in on my laptop. It took 2 minutes to confirm everything. There I was, Melina J. Kramer, listed as the custodial parent of Ezra Jacob Kramer. Application date: 3 weeks before I got that voicemail. Submitted from an IP address tied to this very house. She hadn't planned a weekend favor. She'd laid the bricks for this trap long before I stepped into it. This isn't fraud. It's identity laundering. She didn't just steal my name. She's using my story to scrub hers. Ezra started fussing. I snapped the laptop shut and rushed to soothe him, whispering soft words even my own ears didn't believe. After I laid him down for a nap, I checked the mailbox again, some irrational part of me hoping it was all a glitch. Another envelope waited. This one wasn't government-issued. It was from a prepaid debit service, child benefit disbursements linked to my account. Except I never opened one. I called the number listed. The voice on the other end confirmed my address, my name, my last 4 SSN digits. But the contact phone number? Isolde's? I hung up without saying anything. Ariadne picked up on the first ring. "I need you to talk me down," I said, pacing the kitchen with a dry mouth and clenched jaw. "Because if I don't calm down, I'm going to start setting fire to paperwork." She didn't laugh. She knew better. What happened now? I told her everything, in clipped, fast sentences. The government form, the online portal, the benefit card, the linked account. "She built a legal scaffold out of your silence," Ariadne said after a beat. "You've been complicit just by being uninformed." My mouth went dry. She made me the mother of record for a child I didn't know existed 2 weeks ago. "No," Ariadne corrected. "She made you a character in her redemption arc." I hung up and sat in front of the laptop again. This time I documented everything: screenshots, application timestamps, login logs. I printed the tax notice, made copies of the envelopes, clipped together anything with my name and her lies attached to it. Then I drafted a certified letter to the benefit agency. I, Melina J. Kramer, did not authorize the creation, submission, or execution of any application under my identity regarding dependent Ezra J.D. Kramer. I hereby revoke all associations and request immediate investigation of fraudulent usage. My tone? It wasn't angry. It was surgical. I may have been quiet, but I was never compliant. And now I document everything. I dropped the letter off at the post office before sundown, came home, ate leftover chili, and rocked Ezra to sleep. I told him softly, "You're not the problem, but I will not let you be the reason I vanish." Then, sometime past midnight, a chime echoed from my laptop. New email. Subject line: application update. Custodial adjustment request received. Status pending. Filed under my name. Time-stamped 6 minutes ago. I hadn't touched my computer. My hands trembled as I scrolled further, the air around me turning thick and still. She's still in this system, and she's not done writing me out of my own story. The line at the county clerk's office was longer than usual that morning, which gave me too much time to rehearse my rage and second-guess everything. The email from the night before was still burned into my mind. Custodial adjustment request received under my name while my hands were busy changing Ezra's pajamas. When my number was finally called, I walked up to the counter with the kind of calm that comes from being dangerously close to losing it. The clerk was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a sunflower pin on her lapel. I gave her my name, ID, and asked for records related to any recent filings involving Ezra Jacob Kramer. She hesitated when her fingers paused over the keyboard. Her eyebrows inched upward, then smoothed out as she glanced back at me with a professionally neutral smile. "One moment," she said. "I need a supervisor to unlock this one." I crossed my arms, waited. A supervisor arrived. They whispered. The screen turned. Then I was asked to step aside for a printed copy. It came in a manila folder. Inside was the modification request. Ezra's birth certificate had been updated, listed under Mother Melina J. Kramer. Family contact Isolde M. Kramer. Submission date 5 days ago. Digital signature mine. I hadn't touched that form. Not one word of it. My knees didn't go weak. My hands didn't shake. Instead, I felt that slow, coiling anger that doesn't scream. It watches, measures, waits to strike where it matters. This wasn't just fraud. This was a full rewrite. Deed, title, role, identity. On the way out, I stopped by the pediatric clinic listed on the form, claiming I needed to update insurance information. The receptionist didn't blink when I introduced myself. "Oh, you're Ezra's mom, right? We just got the updated birth record last week. Everything looks good." I almost laughed. "Could I see that file?" I asked. She paused, uncertain. "Just to confirm a few details," I added. "Standard check." She retrieved a copy from the digital system and turned the monitor. There it was, in all caps. Mother, Melina J. Kramer. This isn't sharing custody. This is theft of personhood. I left without saying thank you. That night, back home, I sat on the couch in silence while Ariadne stared at me from across the room, her takeout container abandoned on the coffee table. "You need to file a report," she said. I didn't answer. "Or at the very least, get a lawyer involved. Melina, this isn't just about a lie anymore. This is state records, medical systems. You've become legally responsible for someone else's child without ever consenting." I sighed. "I know. Then why are you sitting here like it's a philosophical debate?" I rubbed my temples. "Because I was raised to keep peace, to pick the quieter road, to not embarrass the family. And now I feel like if I fight back, it makes me the problem." She leaned forward. "You're not asking for justice. You're asking for permission to exist again." That sentence stuck with me longer than I wanted it to. At midnight, I opened my laptop. I started a folder. My name, my life. I backed up every document, screenshots of emails, scans of the altered forms, photos of the envelope, the timestamps, the login IPs. I saved copies of her public posts, every caption, every image where I appeared as someone I wasn't. Then I printed my affidavit. It wasn't long, just a single page, a declaration that I did not authorize any application, consent to any guardianship, or grant legal rights of representation in any matter involving Ezra Jacob Kramer. I signed it. Got it notarized the next morning at the UPS store near our old high school. "You may shoot me with your words," I whispered as I handed it to the notary, "but still, like dust, I'll rise." I walked out lighter. For the first time in days, I felt like I was moving. Back home, I put Ezra to bed and made myself a cup of tea. The house was quiet again, too quiet. I sat in the kitchen, scrolling through old photos I knew were real, the ones no one else had touched. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Hi, this is Carla from Child Protective Services. We received a call regarding a potential welfare concern about the child in your care. We'd like to set up a home visit this week." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "The report came from a family member. They claimed you may be overwhelmed or emotionally unstable. We're required to investigate." Of course, she filed me out of motherhood. And now she's trying to file me into neglect. I was still stirring Ezra's oatmeal when the knock came. Not urgent, not aggressive, just firm enough to carry weight. I opened the door to a woman in a button-down blouse and slacks, a badge clipped to her hip. Her voice was measured, polite. "Hi, I'm Carla, Child Protective Services. May I come in?" I stood still for a second too long. "You're here about a report?" She nodded, stepping past the threshold. "Yes, we received a concern from a family member. It cites emotional instability, unresolved trauma, and an unsafe environment for a child under 1 year of age." I almost laughed. I didn't. Ezra sat in his high chair behind me, cheeks full of mush and face covered in banana. The unsafe environment in question included a fridge stocked with labeled bottles, a spotless nursery, and a baby who slept 8 hours straight the night before. "She didn't just try to remove the baby from my life," I said calmly. "She's trying to erase me from my own credibility." Carla looked sympathetic, but unmoved. She asked to inspect the home. I nodded. While she made notes in her tablet, I picked up the certified envelope I had planned to mail that afternoon. A notarized affidavit, screenshots, proof. But once again, I was reacting instead of initiating. When Carla left, her only comment was, "It looks like Ezra's in good care, but I have to follow the process." "Of course you do." Later that day, another envelope arrived. Legal stationery, law office. I knew the font before I opened it. Inside, a letter from Isolda's attorney. It alleged emotional volatility, verbal hostility, and an inability to maintain clear guardianship boundaries. They wanted me to sign a formal relinquishment of any assumed custodial agreement, as if I'd asked for this child in the first place, as if I had agreed to any of it. "Don't react with emotion," Ariadne said over the phone. "React with structure." So I did. That evening I renamed my folder, Case versus Character Assassination. I uploaded the footage from the CPS visit. I scanned Isolda's posts from the past month. I added documentation from the clinic. Everything. No more second-guessing what counted as evidence. "When someone shows you who they are," Ariadne reminded me, "believe them the first time." I believed her now. A day later, I forced myself to attend a women's leadership panel at the community center. I needed to feel normal, to sit in a room and listen to stories that weren't mine. The first speaker finished. Then a moderator smiled and introduced the next guest, a virtual panelist. She's a single mother, a survivor, and an advocate for second chances. Please welcome Isolde Kramer. I froze. On the screen, Isolde smiled from what looked like a beachfront patio. Her hair was curled, her makeup subtle. Her voice gentle as she spoke of healing through motherhood and restoring family ties through empathy. And then the slideshow began. The third image showed me holding Ezra in the rocking chair in her living room. No context, no caption, just me, her ghost in her story. People around me murmured. I heard someone whisper, "Didn't she give him up?" I didn't stay for the applause. That night, I sent a follow-up letter to CPS with everything. Photos, timestamps, a copy of the previous affidavit. I booked an appointment with a civil attorney. This isn't about proving I'm right. It's about proving she no longer controls the narrative. The next morning, my phone rang again. Voicemail. "This is Officer Brenner with Fresno PD. We've received a claim you may be involved in document fraud involving a minor. We need to schedule a conversation with you." I stared at the screen, jaw tight. First, she stole my story. Now she's trying to make it my crime. The group text said it was just a casual dinner, family only, nothing formal, no pressure. It came through at 3:17 p.m. from Aunt Janice's number, but the tone reeked of Isolde. "We're all meeting at the community center tonight. Isolde's bringing a special update. Hope to see you and the baby there." Ariadne read over my shoulder, sipping her tea like it was whiskey. "She's counting on you staying home." I said nothing. "She's betting you won't show." That you'll take the high road again. Don't. I packed Ezra's diaper bag, checked my files 3 more times, and loaded the tablet and projector into the car. The drive over was quiet. Ezra fell asleep before we pulled out of the driveway, unaware he was about to be used again in a story that never asked his consent. When I arrived, the parking lot was already half full. The center had been decked out with those rented cloth table covers and fake floral centerpieces that looked like they came from a bridal expo clearance bin. People buzzed, paper plates in hand, crock-pots on folding tables. I didn't greet anyone. I found a spot near the back, close to an outlet, and waited. Isolde arrived 10 minutes later, fashionably late, all smiles and shoulder pads. She held a microphone like she'd earned it. The crowd quieted. Ezra stirred in my lap. "Family," she began, "isn't just blood. It's who shows up, who stays, who builds bridges after they've been burned." I plugged in the projector and stood. "No more words," I said loud enough for the mic to pick up. "Just press play." Heads turned. The video began. The footage was clear. The camera I'd tucked behind the picture frame in Ezra's room had caught it all. Isolde on the phone, pacing, laughing. "Melina won't say no. She's too soft. That's why I can trust her to raise him. She still wants to matter to someone, and I need space. Ezra makes me look like a mother, but Melina makes me believable." There were gasps. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." I let it roll for 30 more seconds before pausing it on her face, smiling, mid-lie. The silence was sharper than any scream. Isolde blinked from the front of the room. "It was taken out of context," a cousin whispered. "You said she was unstable." No one laughed, no one clapped, no one saved her. I reached into my bag and pulled out envelopes. Inside were copies of affidavits, application timestamps, screenshots of modified records, all notarized. I handed them to Aunt Teresa, the oldest in the family and the only one who still made people sit down for grace before dinner. "I'm not the villain in her version," I said, voice steady. "I'm just the narrator of mine." I didn't stay to hear the excuses. As I stepped outside, Ezra's breath warm against my shoulder, my phone buzzed, unknown number. "No caller ID, just a message. Nice show. Shame it didn't mention the man she sold your info to." I stood under the glow of the street lamp, rereading the message. So this isn't just a family story anymore. It's a transaction trail. The morning after the community center dinner was quiet, not peaceful, just hollow, like the house had been emptied out while I slept and someone forgot to take me too. Ezra was still curled up in his crib, soft breaths pushing against the stuffed fox he'd adopted as a nighttime bodyguard. For the first time in days, he didn't wake me. Maybe he knew I needed the silence more than he did. My phone buzzed before I even got to the coffee pot. 43 unread messages. Some were from cousins I hadn't heard from since high school. A few said things like, "Didn't know it was that bad," or "Hope you're okay." Others weren't as kind. One message just read, "You should have warned us before going public like that." Warned you? You expect gratitude for survival? I'd settle for silence over suspicion. I brewed the coffee anyway. Poured it. Sat in the living room, scrolling through half sentences and double meanings. No one asked how Ezra was doing. No one said, "I'm sorry we believed her." I needed to hear one voice that wasn't confused or neutral, someone who had once seen me outside the version Isolde curated. I dialed my foster mom. Voicemail. The robotic tone cut in after 3 rings. "This number is no longer in service. Blocked. Still." She hadn't spoken to me since I was 19. The last time we met, I'd been drifting between jobs, clinging to a college acceptance letter I couldn't afford to use. I'd asked her, Do you think anyone can really love someone who's been left too many times? She didn't answer then. I guess she answered now. When someone stops answering, you start inventing reasons for them. Anything to make it not your fault. I set the phone down and started cleaning. Dishes, laundry, the works. Motion made the ache feel distant, manageable. As I was wiping down the kitchen counter, Ezra's voice pierced the quiet. "Mama!" It was sharp, clear, deliberate. I froze. He said it again. Smiled at me, arms stretched from his playmat on the floor. It didn't sting. Not like last time. It split me in half. I knelt down beside him, picked him up. His tiny hands found the hair at my nape and tugged gently, as if to anchor himself to me. Maybe I wasn't meant to be a mother, but he sure was meant to make me feel like one. That afternoon, I opened my laptop to check email. Mixed into the usual noise was another anonymous message. Subject, just in case you forgot who you are. Attached was a screenshot of a late-night FaceTime call. Ezra, much younger, maybe 3 or 4 months old, was crying, arms flailing at the camera. In the top corner, you could see me, tired, pale, trying to calm him from another room. The caption read, "You looked like a mother to him long before you agreed to." I stared at it for a long time. The timestamp was weeks before the day she left him with me for the weekend. The number was unfamiliar. This wasn't just a family thing anymore. There were other eyes, other players, other threads I hadn't traced yet. Later that day, I took Ezra out for groceries. We walked through the store like any other pair, me distracted by a shopping list in my head, him babbling to the bananas in the cart. Afterward, I stopped at a small cafe downtown. I needed 5 minutes of pretending that I wasn't unraveling. I ordered a tea, turned to find a table, and froze. "That's her," someone whispered behind me. From the video, I turned slowly. A man in a collared shirt and dark blazer stood by the door. He wasn't anyone I knew, but he knew me. That was clear from the way he didn't flinch when our eyes met. He smiled faintly, calm, confident. "She never told me you'd fight back," he said. My grip tightened around Ezra's carrier handle, so he has a face now. Let's see if he has a name too. "Melina Kramer?" the man asked. His voice was calm, too measured for a stranger in a cafe. I set my cup down, shielded Ezra's carrier with my foot, and met his gaze. "Yes," I answered cautiously. He extended a business card without breaking eye contact. "Cormac Ellis. I'm a legal compliance consultant." I didn't take the card. "You were in the video," I said. He nodded once. "She never told me you'd fight back." I took the card. He lowered his voice. "Your sister sold access to your records through me. She didn't expect you to dig, or be this loud about it." I stared at him. "So you helped her commit fraud?" He shook his head, almost too casually. "Technically, I reviewed paperwork she said was hers. She signed for everything. But it wasn't hers." He shrugged. "It wasn't personal." "But it's illegal now." And just like that, he turned and walked out, disappearing into the lunchtime foot traffic as if we hadn't just pulled the curtain back on a whole new act of sabotage. I got home, locked the door behind me, and pulled out my laptop. While Ezra napped on the couch, I opened my social media to check something I hadn't dared touch in days. There she was, Isolde on a beach again, this time in Maui, if the location tag was to be believed. A fresh tan, new sunglasses, and a caption that read, "A woman who reinvents herself doesn't need anyone's permission." I opened another tab and pulled up my account summary from the week prior. 2 formula purchases declined, 1 card frozen, 1 alert for suspicious use. She was always rich in story. I was always rich in silence, but silence won't pay the receipts. I clicked into my case file folder, organized every screenshot, every letter, every voicemail. I labeled each subfolder by date and content. Then I printed 3 sets. The next morning, I drove to my attorney's office. She met me in her conference room, hair up in a tight bun, sleeves rolled above her elbows like she was ready for a brawl. I handed her everything. "This is Cormac," I said, sliding his card across the table. He was the broker. Her eyes scanned the name, then the printouts. "We're past cease and desist. We're pressing civil charges. You ready?" "I'm not suing for revenge," I said. "I'm suing for record correction." She nodded, typed something, and turned the monitor toward me. Petitioner: Melina J. Kramer. Defendant: Isolde M. Kramer. She clicked submit. I left the office lighter than I'd felt in weeks. But it didn't last. When I got home, a courier was waiting at my front steps. He handed me a thick envelope. I signed, not thinking. Then I read the header. Notice of transfer of guardianship, temporary custodial delegation. Filed 2 days ago. Approved yesterday. Attached? An authorization letter. The signature line read, Melina J. Kramer. The signature was not mine. The recipient? A nonprofit out of San Diego specializing in high-conflict custody displacement. I didn't even know what that meant. She had sold custody again, just not to me this time, not to herself either. She found someone else to take Ezra. She was done with the narrative, but she wasn't done with the transaction. I didn't cry, didn't shake. I sat down on the couch, opened my phone, and called my lawyer. "I want to go public," I said. "Not just with my story, with everything, with her lies, with the forgeries, with the people enabling her." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you ready to have your pain televised?" I looked over at Ezra, who had just stirred awake and was staring at me with wide, trusting eyes. "I'm ready for her lies to be." The DMV clerk glanced at my paperwork, then up at me with the kind of smile you give someone asking to change their identity at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Big breakup?" she asked. "Family realignment," I replied. She didn't press further, just typed, nodded, and slid a new form toward me. With one stroke of ink and a quiet exhale, I erased the last shared syllable between me and Isolde. Kramer was gone, Melina J. wasn't. And somehow, that felt heavier than the plastic card they'd mail in 2 weeks. I had spent years believing I needed my name back to feel whole. Turns out, I just needed it not to match hers. Outside, the Fresno sun was hot enough to burn through my sleeves. I got into my car, rolled the windows down, and sat in silence. My phone buzzed once. One message. "Isolde, you made this public. We're done." I stared at the screen. She thought silence was punishment. Ariadne had said otherwise. Sometimes silence is a full confession. She was right. I turned the phone off. Back at home, life settled into something resembling routine. Ezra's daycare accepted him without hesitation. The women at the front desk smiled warmly when I signed the paperwork. No one asked about Isolde. No one even recognized the last name, which was good because I no longer carried it. One morning, while picking Ezra up early from daycare, I overheard another mom talking on the phone, her voice sharp, casual. "Yeah, she's going by Izzy Monroe now. Said she left Fresno for good. Pregnant again, too." I froze behind the vending machine. Another baby, another clean slate, another story in the making. "She doesn't need rescuing," I muttered later to Ariadne as we packed up Ezra's old clothes for donation. "She needs an audience. I'm not giving her either anymore." That weekend, I pulled the scrapbook from the top shelf of my closet, the one Isolde had made, the one filled with doctored smiles and photoshopped moments. I didn't cry. I burned it in the fire pit Ariadne and I had set up in the backyard last spring. Page by page, plastic covers, baby handprint stickers, all of it. I kept only one thing, a photo of Ezra asleep in my arms, taken during a rare quiet afternoon when we'd both dozed off on the couch. Not for court, not for proof, just for me. Closure isn't about answers, it's about the absence of need for them. On Monday, I opened the mailbox on my way out to work. Bills, coupons, and a pale blue envelope with no return address. Inside was a letter on the header of a women's legal aid group in Sacramento. Typed, neat, short. I saw your story. I think we were both her target once. No name, just a phone number. I held the letter in my hands for a long time, my breath shallow, my chest rising with something too complicated to call fear, but too familiar to call surprise. She wasn't just rewriting my story. She was serial publishing. The studio lights were warmer than I expected. Not harsh, not blinding, just enough to remind me there was nowhere to hide. The host sat across from me with a clipboard full of facts, questions, and polite shock. She smiled gently, the kind of practiced sympathy morning TV teaches you. "We're here today with Melina J. Kramer," she began. "A woman whose story has captivated viewers across the country. Melina, thank you for being here." I smiled back, just enough. "Thank you for letting me speak in my own voice." We began. The segment moved fast, clip after clip of forged paperwork, split-screen comparisons of birth certificates, video excerpts from the night at the community center. Viewers saw it all. Me holding Ezra. Isolda's voice through the hidden camera. "Melina won't say no. She still wants to matter to someone." The host's eyes widened, even though I could tell she'd watched the footage before. How did it feel hearing that? I didn't blink. It wasn't the worst thing she ever said, just the only time someone else heard it too. When the interview aired later that week, my inbox exploded. Women from Arizona, Colorado, even one in New Jersey, strangers who recognized the tactics, the grooming, the setup, the emotional bait and switch dressed up as family obligation. The silence I endured became the spotlight she couldn't control. 3 days later, the courthouse was standing room only. Isolda sat with her attorney, arms crossed, lip gloss perfect. No expression. The judge read each count aloud: identity fraud, forgery, malicious misuse of government resources. Verdict: guilty, restitution ordered in full. Isolda would never again be allowed to act as guardian, custodian, or representative of a minor in the state of California. Her mouth opened to object. I didn't look at her. "I don't want her money," I told the court. "I want her erased from my records." Before I left, I turned once, just once, to face her. I didn't raise my voice. "This wasn't revenge," I said. "This was record correction." Later that evening, I found a package waiting at my door, hand-delivered by my eldest aunt. "I thought you should have this," she said simply. No apology, just the weight of acknowledgement. It was a family scrapbook. Inside, a page labeled 2011 Easter Brunch, scrawled in ink under a group photo. Melina, black sheep. I pulled out a photo of Ezra and me. He was asleep, arms splayed, mouth open, safe. I glued it over the insult and wrote underneath, "We write our own bloodlines." A week passed. Then, too, the story lost traction online, which was fine with me. Ariadne helped me finalize paperwork for a nonprofit I'd started, Rewrite Foundation, dedicated to helping victims of identity manipulation, especially within families. Survivors of siblings, spouses, parents who twisted the truth into a leash. We didn't need revenge. We needed documentation. You can't always punish betrayal, I told our first support group meeting, but you can publish truth. The last interview I agreed to was for a court press follow-up. The reporter was younger than me, wide-eyed, likely fresh out of college. At the end, she asked the question they all seemed to circle around. If you could say one thing to your sister today, what would it be? I looked directly at the camera. Next time you want someone to raise your child, don't pick the sister you dumped like trash. There was a pause. Then the red light on the camera clicked off. I stood, gathered my things. Some stories don't need sequels, but mine, it just got optioned for truth.